Hi, and welcome back to the HSP Connection with me, Robbie Lee.
And me, Philippa Robinson. This is where we share our stories, insights, and strategies to help fellow highly sensitive people navigate their own path to living a fulfilling and meaningful life.
We're on a mission to reclaim the word sensitive and help the world see the strength in sensitivity. Philippa, my friend, what are we talking about today?
Well, what we're going to talk about today, Robbie, we're in this healing series, and we did mention a few episodes ago that we would talk about some of the things that we've experienced, and even if perhaps we might not have experienced them personally, but things we know other people have experienced. If we keep pushing our feelings down, if we keep ignoring our intuition, if we just, try and stay in the non highly sensitive lane, and try and keep our mask on and do what we think we bunny ears should do, rather than actually being true to who we are. So I suppose we could call this something like the perils of not, or the perils of ignoring our true self.
Yes.
Yeah, that rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Yeah.
It hits me in the gut a little bit when you say that. It's like,
oh,
yeah.
Okay. Tell us about that. Tell us about it hitting you in the gut.
Because it's something I experienced and my clients as well. And, and you and it's just, I feel like it's such a broad, honestly, I think it's experience a lot of people have, but then I'll talk about my slices of community, which are women. I'm a queer woman, so the LGBTQ folks. I'm a highly sensitive woman, so the highly sensitive people. Like, I feel like in these groups and others, but these are the groups I'm in, it's such a common experience to hear people talk about, well, I was trying to fit in. Well, I ignored this so that I could look more quote unquote normal. Or sometimes it's even not that overt, but just we've absorbed all these messages. We've gotten these cues that when we behave a certain way, it doesn't really go over well. So we kind of self stifle. And what I'm doing right now, I'm feeling myself kind of like curl up, like over my, vital organs. It's like get small. And I did that for so many years. I just shrank and kept getting smaller and smaller, trying to fit in these spaces that society gives us. And it's so not healthy.
No, it's not. And you know what? I just had a real not punch in the gut, but a real moment then when you said that about sort of curling over, and you said over your vital organs. And I know we see that as shrinking and being small. I know, and I'm not saying that's not true. Of course it is. But also it's a protection thing as well.
Protection, 100%.
Isn't it? Yes. It is a being small, to be, either making our true self small so that we can fit in, and protecting that like real soft, tender part of us that is kind of the real core of who we are.
Yeah. It's the magical part. I'm thinking about Maggie and your great conversation with her.
Yes.
It's our magical part. It's a part of us that is different from everybody else. It's those unique parts. It's from the highly sensitive lens. It's like all those gifts that come with being highly sensitive. Like it's that magical, cool place inside of there that, we're trying to protect it.
Yeah, because I think Maggie calls it the rose.
Yeah,
I think didn't she call it the rose? So it's like that beautiful, layered, like, oh yeah, just there, like waiting. Maybe it's in bud rather than in flower, but it's there, sort of, waiting to bloom.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so we do, for lots of reasons, I mean, mine definitely came from my keeping small, keeping protection, and also putting a mask on to try and fit in, very much came from not feeling worthy and not feeling like I fitted in right from a very young age.
Yeah.
So whoever I was at, really, really quite young, I'm probably talking 3 or 4, if not. I mean, I have a very strong sense of actually coming into this world, like being born feeling like it wasn't safe. So and and even just talking to you now, I can feel the emotion coming up. So I'm talking really young. I have felt that I need to protect. I have felt that I need to try and fit in. I suppose my way of protecting myself is where my people pleaser definitely came from. Try and please everybody so people will be nice to me. Didn't necessarily work, but that's definitely where it came from.
Yes. And so many of us, that's where that people pleaser came from, right? We got some messages, some capital T trauma or lower T trauma in childhood that engaged our internal protective and survival things and said, okay, make people happy. It's not safe if people are unhappy around you. Like, do your best to fit in.
Yeah.
And
I was having, just going back to big T or little T trauma, I was having a conversation, because that's, very normal language for me now, and it is for you, obviously. But I was having a conversation with somebody just last week, and they hadn't heard of the concept of little T trauma. So they still thought what had happened to them was not what we would call big T trauma. Therefore, they hadn't experienced trauma. But used language around it that was very much the sort of language we would use around trauma. And I did say to them, that sounds like, I mean, I asked them if it was okay if I shared them what I was feeling, but that felt like trauma to me. And that drip, 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 drip of neglect, and all those things that come with little T trauma. So for anybody listening, I just wanted to explain that in case you were like the person I was talking to last week who hadn't heard that before. I didn't really experience big T trauma, but I definitely experienced a lot of years of little T trauma, which adds up. It's in our bodies, it's in our system, it's pervasive, it's in there, it's in our bones.
100%.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad you took the time to kind of explain that a little bit. And it can be really eye-opening, because there are, I think, pretty well-defined things that people point at and go, yeah, that's traumatic.
Yeah.
But then there's this whole other big bucket of experiences that a lot of us go through that we can easily try to minimize. It's like, well, here was my experience. I don't know why I'm feeling X, because I didn't go through that.
Yeah.
And so it's like another tool we use and others use to kind of minimize how we're feeling, or to tell ourselves or others tell us there's something wrong with us and how, but it's like, no, exactly what you said. These things add up. They affect our systems. They affect how we interact with the world, how safe we feel, and what things we've engaged to keep ourselves safe, and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Exactly. And they, another sort of thing that tends to happen is that we will push it to one side as well. The little T trauma stuff. It's very easy to push it to one side and deny your own experience, because you can always see somebody who, well, it's not as bad as what they've been through.
Yes.
And that but that person's been through that, and you've been through what you've been, and that matters. Because that has been your experience. That is what you have been through, and it's in you. So it's, it is really important to feel those things at the right time with support if you need to, and it's absolutely appropriate to push it to one side if you can't deal with it in the here and now, push it to one side, but make sure you come back to it. Because as we mentioned in previous episodes, things happen to us if we don't come back and address it, and we don't look at it, and we don't let it move through our body. It stays stuck.
Yes.
In our body.
Yes. And what I've been learning is that stuckness is what can cause a lot of symptoms in the body. Like, it starts showing up in other ways. It's like, well, the energy didn't get to move through and out. And so our system is meant to move things through, but when something gets stuck there, it creates an issue in the system. And
exactly. And I think in the episode we did with Josh about burnout, burnout, I think we can all understand that burnout, we experience burnout after prolonged exposure to stress and not having an outlet for it, and not letting it, not having a way for it to pass through our body. And burnout is just one of those things. But I'm pretty sure Josh talked about some of what we've just talked about in his episodes. If anybody's interested in hearing more about burnout, go and check our much earlier episode out, where we talked to our friend Josh. And I think Amy, the episode we did with Amy, she talks about her health issues, which I'm pretty sure, I know she's told me personally, I'm pretty sure she said in the episode, hope she did, because I'm going to talk about it now. But just how her health issues were linked to what we've just been talking about, not living in alignment with who we really are and what we need, and trying to do what we feel we, bunny ears again, should do. Yeah.
Yes. Oof. I mean, every time I sit with that, like thinking about how people do what they think they quote unquote should do, right? Yeah. And how unhealthy that is. And I just, like, I look at my own family and go, it's a whole family of shooters going on in there. Like, it's not a unique thing. And it just, there's something about it that hurts my inside. And I go, I'm going to do my big lofty thing again, but what would the world, how different would it look if people freed themselves from that? If they were really doing the things that light them up, if they were being who they truly are. And
yeah, exactly. I mean, what would the world be like? And I don't suppose we'll get to see that, but what we can do is do what we need to do for us,
100%.
Which is what we're doing, us here personally. We can talk about it, which is what we're doing here, having this conversation together. And hopefully we can inspire people who listen to delve into this for themselves, either, from the beginning, or, delve in maybe a little bit deeper if you've already done some of that. Because I absolutely would not be here talking to you now unless I'd done that. It was funny because we just talked briefly before we started recording, and I was saying that I hadn't really had health issues that led me to where I am, and then I remembered that it all started with me losing the sight in my eye. I was like, oh, okay.
Which made me laugh, because it's just like, oh yeah, no, I haven't had many health issues. Oh wait, I lost the sight of my eye. That, I guess, was a bit of a health issue.
Well, I think my body had thrown me lots of little things that I'd managed to ignore. Yes. So I do absolutely believe that my body threw me something so big that I just couldn't ignore it. And I suppose the reason I don't think about it in the same light as other health issues like that you've talked about, and that Amy has talked about, is because mine was quite acute. It came in strong and it sort of got fixed. So in a relatively short space of time, I mean, but it left such a big impact. And yeah, so, I suppose if all else fails, our body will give us a health issue that, because it stops us in our tracks.
Absolutely. And I go back and forth and thinking like it's my body on purpose, like giving me a signal, like my migraine. And then sometimes I think, well, that could be true. And it can also be like I have this image of like buildup, like kind of in a pipe, like, so I feel
The
like
pressure.
things maybe, well, like when there's gross stuff that's building up on the inside of a pipe, so it makes the pipe get smaller.
Oh,
Do you know what
the actual bit in the, I get you. Yes.
Yeah. And so like I think about that sometimes too, where it's like these little things that are affecting my system. And it's a bunch of things over time. And it's things I don't address or didn't pay attention to or didn't know how to do anything with or blah, 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 right? A bunch of things. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now my pipe is clogged. But really it's been all of these other things over time. That's what I wonder about. It's like a visual that keeps coming up to me when I'm meditating about my body. So I think it's a
telling you
bunch of
something.
little things. Yeah, it's talking to me in pictures. I'm trying to decipher it,
Yeah, that's so interesting. Your body is trying to talk to you in pictures, and and that's. And do you think that it's possible that it's been trying to talk to you in pictures before, but you haven't been receiving them?
100%. And the reason I say that is because I have this experience that every time I look toward something, I get a message. And what I mean is like when I finally accepted, I've talked about this here before, I finally accepted, oh, I do have intuition. Let me just lean into it. And I leaned into it and it was like, boom, here's a bunch of information. Like, yeah, okay. That's not new info. Like you've been giving me that for years. So same, like when I tune into my system, my body, and I'll be like, okay, I'm doing my best to listen. It's like, here's info. And so it's like, yeah, it's been trying to send me stuff. I just didn't know what the thing was, or I brushed it off, or I'd be like, yeah, or I'm too busy, or like it just, or I didn't get it.
Yeah.
Whatever the reasons, right?
Yeah. And do you think we don't get it? Because I totally understand that. Do you think we don't get it because we're busy trying to sort of tune out so that we can then be what we should be? So because we're not tuned into who we really are, we're spending all this energy and all this time and trying to do the things we think we should do and we're supposed to do, and society tells us these are the things you should be doing. We're spending all that energy doing that there's just not a lot left over for the real us and the messages that are happening.
100%. Yes to everything you just said. And then layer onto that maybe the fear of, well, wait, what if I did a fear of what are these messages telling me? And then what am I going to have to do about the messages? Or what are the people around me going to think? Right? It's all those layers of fear and what ifs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one, what are the people around me going to think, is a biggie, isn't it? It really is a biggie, because I do think that even when we have accepted to some degree that things need to change, and perhaps we do have to, even if we don't recognize that what we're saying to ourselves is, but it is about listening to ourselves or going inward and finding out more about who we really are. That whole, but what is everybody going to think, and what are the people around me going to do, and how am I going to change? I did struggle with that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah. And have you experienced that sort of struggle around what other people think?
100%. And I think, I'm thinking back to my last job in corporate America, which is the job I had when my whole system crashed and I had a
Yeah.
migraine for a year, which took me out of corporate America work. And years leading up to that, I was like, this isn't healthy for me. This
Mm.
isn't healthy for me. And I was trying to do small things or just, and then I would just be like, I don't know. Because I would think the way the job set up isn't healthy for me. I would really like to go work for myself. And then what would happen? So that thought would come in, and then immediately it would be like, I can't do that because my wife is needing it, and because of income, and like all the things.
Yeah.
And the reality was, I mean, I did that for years. So kind of instead of I did it's exactly what you said. Like I didn't really have the energy to put toward this thing that was popping up for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
I mean, I started to go to school to be a coach and things like that, but it was just, I mean, I think about those times like I was just like, walking exhausted and walking
Mm.
just a little bit like a zombie. It was just like get through. Like you just have to get through. You can't quit your job. You can't, like we need the income. We need all of those messages. And what would my wife think if I'm not,
Yes.
what my
Yes.
parents think? It's just like
Oh,
whoever the
yeah.
people are, right? Just whoever the people are, like what would my coworkers think? And then finally, like I didn't have it. My body chose for me. It was
Yeah.
like, we cannot carry on. And it hit me hard.
It gave you something you couldn't ignore.
I couldn't ignore it. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Walking exhausted. Wow.
Yeah.
It's sort of, yeah. Or what came to my mind when you said that was functional exhausted. Like we talk about, my mother was an alcoholic and we talk about functional alcoholics. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, in a way, functional exhausted is like, they seem like two words that shouldn't go together, but you were absolutely exhausted, but on
Yeah.
one level you were functioning
Yep.
to try and carry on as normal or whatever that is.
Yep.
And you make before I lost the sight in my eye, it wasn't like everything was rosy, and then I lost the sight in my eye, and I definitely spent a good 5 years before that really feeling unhappy and not really understanding why. I was getting angrier and angrier. I'd fly off the handle for like something really little. Now I know that was me being triggered into, my nervous system was on the high alert the entire time. I was being triggered into a trauma response a lot all the time. And, I was just, to say I was not feeling fulfilled with my life is like, a massive understatement. And I just didn't know what to do about it. I didn't know where to start.
Exactly. I think that's so relatable to people. It's just like, okay, even if we acknowledge the feeling, then it's like, what do I do with it? Where do I start? What it can be really overwhelming.
It is. And sorry if this is putting you on the spot, but if somebody is listening to this and thinking that, have you got what would you say to them?
I mean, what I would say now is seek out a therapist who knows what they're doing and knows about highly sensitive folks because it's different. Seek out coaches like you and I.
Yeah.
Because we can be really helpful in helping people.
Yeah.
I think, and then
so don't bury it.
I was going to say, because the next thing on my list was like, write it out. So I was just like, okay, yeah. So it's like talk it out, write it out, like start to acknowledge it and get it out of your system.
Yeah.
There's something about that is helpful because then you can look at it. Like when it's all swirling up in there, I used to think like I could solve it all when it's just stayed inside. I could solve it all and then present it out to the world in a pretty package. And it's like, yeah, that's not how it works. You got to get it out. You got to get it out. But get it out to safe people, like to the best of your ability. right? Because a lot of us have had those experiences where we tried to say what was true for us, and the people who were listening weren't the people to be telling, because they're not getting it either and just kind of adding to the trauma. So that's why I mentioned like some of those professionals first.
Yes.
If you have someone who just really gets who you are, talk to them. But start getting it out. Start getting it out of you.
Yes.
Acknowledging it.
And if you can't find anybody to talk to, like you say, or you don't want to, or whatever, then, get a notebook and a pen or a pencil and start writing it down. Just let it free flow. You don't even have to read it back. It's not about being grammatically correct and writing incorrect sentences and being able to read it back. Just let it go. Just write. Free writing. Just let it write. Just let it go. Write whatever comes up and know that you are doing good.
Yes.
You are absolutely doing yourself so much good by doing that, even if it takes a little while for you to appreciate that. But you absolutely are. And like you said, Robbie, you might be able to process it differently once it's on paper. Maybe you do need to read it back to process it. Maybe you might be a bit more like me, and I'm processing as I'm going. So by the time I finish writing, I'm done. I don't need to write it back. Maybe you need to read it back to yourself out loud because you need to hear yourself say it. Mm-hmm. I'm also like that. Anybody who's listened to this podcast, to a few episodes will have heard me and you processing out loud as we're saying things. We are feeling what is happening in our body, and it's all working together for us to be processing what we're actually saying. I'm kind of doing that a little bit now.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, get it down somehow. Yes. Get it out.
Get it out. And that makes me think of some of the people we've talked to in the healing series. Like, yes. So there's like, go do a Reiki session, do breath work. Oh my gosh, breath work is amazing for that. There's all the somatic arts, like moving your body and learning how to reconnect. There are lots of different avenues in, right? So if you're hearing us talk and go, writing is the last thing I'm going to do. Okay. Yep. Then don't push yourself to do that. But what do you feel drawn to?
Yes.
And go do that. Yoga. Do you need some restorative? Start there. Like if you hear me say yoga, you're like, no, don't start there. But you will know, like when you sit with it for a second, you'll be like, I'm really drawn to X. Yeah. Great. Go do that. There's lots of ways to get in there.
I'm really glad you've mentioned that, because actually speaking it to somebody, writing it down doesn't work for everybody. And it's not, in order to process it, you don't have to articulate it in any way. So I'm really glad you mentioned somatic work, because you can get the healing that you need from Reiki, as you say, or breath work. And there you're not even telling anybody nobody's hearing you say it. No, you're not writing it down. But you will feel healing from it. In a way that perhaps takes a little while for you to appreciate if it's new. Mm-hmm. And I suppose another thing I'd say is sit with any hard feelings that come up and let the tears flow if they need to, because that's a big release as well.
Oh my gosh. If we could, if people would do one thing differently in the world, which is to be with whatever their feelings are and let them fully process instead of shoving them down. Ooh. Because we're all taught to shove them down, but there's no space for our feelings to exist. Like that was my experience anyway. I'll speak for myself. There's no space for certain feelings to exist, and so it's like shove them down.
Yeah.
Well, then again, they come out somehow.
They absolutely do. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I heard in my childhood, if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry for. So, that was a very clear message that crying was not accepted. And how often do we say to people when they are crying? I mean, I still have to stop myself to, don't cry.
Don't cry. Don't cry. I know.
And it's like, I can't wait for the day when I can say to somebody, cry as much. I mean, we do actually.
Yes.
When we in our community, if somebody's upset and they're crying, we always say your tears are very welcome here.
Yeah, you're safe.
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
never say don't cry, because we understand the power of the tears and expressing the feeling now.
Yes.
So I suppose, if we could encourage listeners, that would be one, if you are the one crying, try not to be shut down by people saying, oh, don't cry, because it's their feelings around, it's their discomfort around you crying that are asking you to stop crying. Whereas what you need is to cry. So maybe you can move off somewhere and cry with somebody else or cry by yourself. But if you are feeling that those emotions coming up and the tears coming, try and let them flow.
Yeah. One thing I used to do, because I could feel my feelings getting stuck. It's just because of all the shoving down, you know?
Yeah.
And then it would be like, and I would say, I need to cry. I need to cry. I need to cry. Like I knew I needed to. And so then I would just put on the sad TV and just let it go. Like I would give myself permission. And then that became a doorway I could tap into. Okay, what am I sad about? Like I'm not falling this hard over whatever just happened on the TV. Like what did that tap into for me? And that was a doorway for me to get into some of that stuck energy.
Yeah. Put some sad film on, sad TV program, sad music.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Gosh, the music, the sad songs that I used to listen to, especially when I was a teenager, and it wasn't just teenage angst, it was a lot of other things that were going on as well. And I was on a podcast once talking about music from the past, and as I was talking out loud about a song that I used to cry to all the time, and it was about a boy, well, it was about a boy not coming back to you, and I thought that was just my usual teenage angst around boys. And as I was talking about it on this podcast, I realized actually, oh, I'm gonna cry. It was about my dad, because my dad had gone and I didn't know where he was, and I wanted him to come back.
Of course you did. Yes.
But I did not appreciate at the time that's why that song in particular meant so much at the time. Yeah.
I mean, as you were talking, it's making me think, like, if we can give ourselves permission, like these things are naturally happening, like you're crying, like this song really affected you, right? And if we can get curious about it, like curiosity can be a good first step. It's just like, why is this affecting me so much?
Yeah. And I just felt wrong. And I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. And I, if I'd known to be curious, I mean, I know much more to be curious now. Where is this coming from? And it's very helpful in the moment, or not necessarily in the moment if it's so overwhelming, but once that initial overwhelm has gone, that was a big reaction. What was that about? And that's what I did quite recently when I was talking about everything that was going on at work, and I realized I needed to back off a little bit. So that has come from not pushing feelings down now, letting it pass, and then being curious about what happened.
Oof, that's so big. That curiosity versus the judgment, which is, I think, a pattern you and I have both talked about for ourselves, right? It would just be like, we'd have the emotion and then we judge ourselves for having the emotion.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, which just perpetuates the whole thing. And what we're talking about is having the emotion, noticing it, well, feeling it first of all, and then noticing it and then getting curious. Oh, exactly what you just said. Oh, that was pig. I wonder where might that be coming from? Like what am I needing? What's because my emotions are cues, right? They're telling us things.
Yes, absolutely. It's the body giving us signals, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I believe now, after where I've got to in the last 7 or 8 years, is that the wisdom's in the body. The wisdom is not in our brain. The wisdom is in our body, and our brain feeds off our body, or our brain follows what's happening in our body, and sometimes it enables us to be curious and to consider things around it. And a lot of the time, or certainly up until we can become that curious being, it's the judgment instead. And you also talk about logicking all over your intuition, don't you? But that all comes from what's going on in our brain, is that or our heads and our thoughts, and whereas the initial thing has all come from our body. It's all reacting to what's going in our body.
Yes. And I feel like we've been educated to listen to our brains. Like we have been trained to, work that muscle. We've had way less education, and sometimes none at all, about the wisdom of our body, like what our body is telling us, and to listen. And so I think that's why it's so easy for us to tune it out and to push it aside and try to logic it, right? Yeah. And because that's where our training is. But I agree with you. The wisdom is not in the brain is like the super loud, obnoxious cousin who just keeps spewing stuff, and you're like, shut up, you don't even have all the information, right? Yes. Like the body has the information.
Yes. And that whatever that voice, whoever that voice is, that that might be good for them, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's good for us. What we need to do is tune into what is happening for us and what is good for us, because if we don't, like we've said, it can lead to burnout. We're definitely not living in alignment with what is true and good for us. We won't feel fulfilled, and we are likely somewhere along the line to experience some health issues as a result of that.
Yeah.
And that's not what we want.
No. No, we don't.
No.
And even, I'm thinking, as I've shared, I'm still in the middle of my thing. So all my health stuff isn't gone.
Yes.
But, and I will say, and that is true. And my life is so much more fulfilling because I have been doing the work. I am leaning into my gifts. I'm doing work that I feel like I was meant to do. Yeah. So I'm growing, and I'm growing the relationship with my intuition, with my body. So these things are growing for me. And even though my health isn't completely wonderful, I feel like if I look at me as a whole, these pieces have improved the quality of my life exponentially,
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So that's everything coming much more into alignment. Perhaps there's still some work to go, way to go, but it's coming into alignment. Is that how you would describe it?
I love that language. Yes, that's exactly right. And as I'm getting more of the pieces in, it's like it's having an amazing impact on my life. And I'm saying that not to be like, yay me. I mean, although yay me, because I am doing my work, but also I say that to encourage other people. Like, as you start investing in you, you will get a return on that. You're worth it. You're worth it.
You are.
Just want to tell everybody they're worth it.
Yeah. Hi. If you're enjoying listening to this podcast, have you thought about joining our HSP Connection community for more connection with other HSPs? Because really, us HSPs thrive in the community of others.
Absolutely. And Philippa and I have created this space on an online platform where we can connect with each other deeply. We can have these awesome conversations, and we would love to get to know you over there in that space.
We would. So if you're interested and want to join straight away, there's a link in the show notes. And if you'd like to have a chat with either of us beforehand, please reach out. Now, back to the episode. Can I share with you something that happened this weekend?
Please. Yes, yes, yes.
So I went to a big concert this weekend. And I decided that big concerts weren't really for me quite a few years ago now. But this is a band I really like, and it was a 20-minute walk away from where I live. They were playing in a big football stadium near where I live. And I went when they were there 5 years ago. And I really wanted to go, so I got tickets probably the end of last year, actually. But as the day came nearer and nearer, I was like, oh gosh, I'm an HSP. This is going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of people, a lot of hustle and bustle. It's going to be noisy. Oh, we're all going to be squished in these seats. Oh, do I really want to do this?
So relatable, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. And I do this all the time. I book these things thinking, oh, yeah, this is going to be great. And then as it gets closer, I'm like, oh, gosh, do I really want to do this? Anyway, and if somebody had offered me money for the tickets that day, I probably would have accepted it. I didn't want to let my friend down, I hasten to add, because I was going with a friend. But if she sort of felt quite similar, somebody had offered us money for the tickets, I would quite happily have not gone. But anyway, that didn't happen. And we went and I met her and we left ourselves plenty of time to get there and to find our way through. So we weren't stressed in the queues. Nice. And getting to our seats. She'd hurt her knee as well, actually. So we needed extra time to get to our seats. And we found our way there and, it was okay. Yes, there were a lot of people, but it wasn't too bad. And we sat down and it was just amazing. It was so utterly fantastic. And, I know a lot of the songs, which always helps. I was singing along, I was sticking my arms in the air at the right time, along with all the rest of the audience and screaming at the end of each song. I was really hoarse the day after. And it's the first time I've been to anything like that since I've understood that I'm highly sensitive as well. And I remember sitting in the seats and like looking around at all these people who were all there at the same time. And, we were all, it felt like I belonged to something quite special in that moment because all 30,000 of us were there at the same time experiencing this thing that was happening. And I was sort of, if I looked straight out, I could like see the sky because the stage was slightly to my left. And the sun, the sky was blue, the sun was out, the sun was going down. And at one point, I was purposely looking out at the sky and just like feeling everything that like the whole, like the energy pulsing in the arena and allowing the music and the atmosphere and everything just to be in me in a way. And I was experiencing it in a way that I have not understood that that's what I'm doing before. And it was just magical. And right at the end, there's two songs that they usually alternate with how they end their concerts, and I love them both. And then they did them both. And I was just, the second to last one, if you'd looked at me, you wouldn't have known really, but if you looked at me, there were tears coming down my face because it was just such a magical moment. And then fireworks went off and I love fireworks. So, and I just said to my friend, I am so glad we didn't miss that. And I am so glad I didn't sell a ticket and not witness that experience. And I suppose I want to share this for quite a few reasons. One is that my feelings were very like, oh, do I really want to go? And I suppose I did push those away a little bit, but I didn't in a way because I think my intuition told me that I should go. Or it was definitely a worth considering. And also it is something that I shy away from now more. Now I understand the effect that big crowds have on me and on my body. It is something that I won't throw myself wholeheartedly into like I used to do. And yet I am so glad I did. Because when I got there, I just got out of it what I really wanted. And I didn't even know I wanted, but I experienced it at a completely different level. So as a highly sensitive person, it was just phenomenal.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I got to see you the day after because we had a community event that we were both in. And you were flying. This was still the day after. And it was so fun to see you in that energy, and just the way you explained, like, how can, like, the connection of all those people experiencing the same thing is profound. And you were able to really, like, I pictured you kind of sending out all of your senses, like you allowed yourself to really experience it, and like highly sensitive technicolor, it was like
it was like it was 4D. It was definitely a highly sensitive person's experience of what that sort of thing can be. And my friend is not highly sensitive, and do you know what, I don't even know whether she knows that I am, but I know that she knew I was having a real reaction to it, and she just put her arm around me and went, oh, just and I wasn't embarrassed about the fact that I was clearly having a big emotional reaction to it. I was loving it. I was loving it. I don't quite know, but I think what I'm trying to say is that is what my life has become as a result of not pushing everything down and allowing. That's the true me. That me and my inner child were having an absolute ball in that moment.
Yes.
And that's what life has become for me as a result of working out who I really am and allowing that sometimes to show. That's what I was doing. That was the real me in that moment.
That's magical.
Or a part of me. There are other parts of me that are not quite so fun and exciting and having such a wonderful time. Every part of me is welcome these days, but that was definitely a core part of me having that experience.
You know what I love about what you just said too is like, and you allowed that, like you weren't trying to shove yourself in a box, and you weren't saying, what if someone see me cry and I don't want my friend to think I'm too whatever, right? You were just allowing yourself to feel whatever you were feeling and be 100% in the moment. And it it fueled you. Like I'm saying that because I saw you the next day and you were still full of energy, right? It's just like that lent energy to you, which I thought was so beautiful.
And to be honest, the songs are still in me. I keep bursting out into song occasionally. And I did it, I did it in the office today. I was like, and awesome. It's really given me something. And it's interesting because it feels partly a little bit aligned with the sort of thing that Maggie was talking about in her episode. And it feels like whatever that bit of me I tapped into was part of my magical self. The core of and I wonder, actually, I'm just trying to think of some of the things she was talking about. She was talking about the 5 magical selves: the healer, the seer, the magician, the sage, and the other one, mystic.
Nice job.
Mystic,
Nicely done.
Yes. And I did her test and I came out as a seer. I think you did her test and you came out
healer,
as a healer. And I think probably
have pieces
the second
of both.
one, I think my second one is probably a healer and your second one would probably be a seer. And she talked about obviously I picked up on the healer stuff, and she talked about seers needing a balance, or HSP seers needing a balance of receiving the world, receiving what's going on in the world, which we will do with our empathy and our desire to help. But she also talked about balancing that with a need to broadcast as well. Like, and I suppose I feel that's what I'm doing here on this podcast, and why I want to talk about things, because I want to tell the world that highly sensitive people are blooming fantastic.
Yes.
We have such great strength. We have such gifts. I want to tell highly sensitive people that they have those gifts and those strengths, and also that it's important to look after ourselves.
Yes. 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 To everything
Yes.
that you said. Yeah.
Yeah. And
What I
yeah.
oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, please go on. What you loved?
I was going to say what I love about you being at that concert is it breaks another stereotype of just like, well, highly sensitive people, we can't enjoy loud things, we can't like I saw you afterward. You were glowing. Like you not only enjoyed it, but it's just like it tapped into something for you. And it's just such a great example of I know that you take really good care of your system. You do the cold water swimming and you like you take care of your system and then listen to what you're needing. So you were able to go and have this experience and be you in the world. You got to, a favorite band of yours and the music that just feed your soul with 30,000 other people. And you saw it with your HSP-ness.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
unapologetically. That was the word I was looking for. Like you were just unapologetically you. Yeah. And you got to soak it all up because and I'm not trying to say that you're perfect because none of us are, but you do a lot of work to keep your system in alignment. So you were able to go and do this because your system wasn't so like, oh God, I can't.
Yes.
And I think that's another example of, like there's benefits to like doing some of the stuff we're talking about. It doesn't mean you're going to be then a monk or, a hermit in a cave somewhere. Like you're living life. You can go and live your life still. But just, I hope that made sense.
Yeah. Oh, it did. And you make a really good point. And thank you. So yes, part of me was like, do I really want to do this?
Right.
And I'm just being honest, part of me was, oh, do I really want to do this? But actually there was a big part of me was like, there really was. And because generally I'm in a good place, and I was in a good place on Saturday, I was like, no, I'm going to go and do this. And it's going to be great. And I did go with the intention that I was going to enjoy it, because there was no point me going and being miserable. So I was going to do my best to enjoy it. And also when I saw you the day after, it was at the end of the day, and that was the only thing I did that day. I was definitely allowing my system to come down. I mean, when I got home, my husband was amazed because I was singing at the top of my voice, twirling around the kitchen, singing these songs. And he's like, my singing voice is not brilliant either. And he's like, wow. He said, and he said to me, it's so nice to see you looking so happy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So it is possible to be highly sensitive and do those things. But we have to kind of like look after our nervous system at the same time.
Yes. Ugh. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for joining in with the joy for me about that. It feels like it was quite a big night on lots of levels for me.
Yeah, it does seem like that. I can feel that for you. Yeah.
I suppose, were there any there were a couple of other things that came up in the Maggie episode for me, the healing our magical self, because I think a lot of the things that she talked about why heal our magical self are tying in with some of the things that other people are talking about, that we've just talked about, maybe more on the physical level rather than the magical level, but they're coming at the same thing from just a slightly different angle. I think it is all about our true self.
Yes.
And understanding that, knowing it, honoring it, looking after it, and allowing it to be its best.
Yeah. Like allowing it to be what it is instead of shoving it into someone else's box.
Yes.
Right. Just allowing it to bloom freely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Maggie talked a little bit about the thorns, didn't she? Well, she talked about the thorns, and the thorns are on the outside to protect us.
Yeah.
But also, if we don't acknowledge that part inside of us, that soft, squishy, vulnerable, creative, magical self that's inside, the thorns can sort of turn in, and that's how she talked about disease as in dis-ease.
Yes.
That's how she talked about the thorns coming inwards, didn't she?
Yes.
And whether that imagery works or not, I think I can grasp definitely what she's talking about. I mean, I think the imagery does work for me, actually, but I'm just thinking of anybody who's listening, if that imagery doesn't work so much, it's very much the similar thing that we've been talking about, just from a different angle.
I completely agree. And you and I were talking earlier about kind of like our own judgmental voices, like this voices in our head, right?
Yes.
And how those can be so judgmental. To me, that's the thorns turning inward, right?
Yes.
It's like we're taking that protective thing.
Yes.
And it's now harming us.
Yes.
Yeah. I think.
So we have
hear
to start
a lot of my
looking at
clients talking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you feel, because you're a healer, you're a coach, you're a highly sensitive person. Yeah. So I'm imagining that when you have clients who talk about things going on in their body, things that are, disease, can you feel what is happening for them? Can you?
Yes, very often.
Yes.
Yes, I can. Yeah. I find so whether or not I feel it in my physical body kind of comes and goes, and as I'm connecting more with my body again, I'm noticing changes in what I pick up from others. So that's
interesting.
Very interesting for me to watch. But I remember, like, I'm remembering things where I was just about to censor myself, and I'm like, no, this was my experience. People are going to think whatever they think about it. This was really my experience. I used to be able to touch someone close to me, and like if they were in pain, I could put my hand on them and literally like suck that pain out, but I would take the pain. And then I didn't know what to do with it at that point. I would just sit there with the pain, but they didn't have the pain anymore. And that made me feel so good. And then I shut that down because it was like, what is happening? And also, I don't want any more pain. No, thank you. But I'm remembering some things. It's like, yeah.
That's really powerful.
I'm a little shocked I just said that out loud. So I'm having one of those feelings like, oh, I just said that to the world. But yeah, that is true for me.
Well, if it makes, I don't know if I'm not saying this just to make you feel better, but you're not the first person who's told me they can do that. I
does
don't
make me feel better.
Good. I have not experienced that. I don't think I can't do that as far as I'm aware. But I do know at least somebody else who's told me that they can do that too.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying I healed people's broken bones and things. Like, I'm talking about like a headache or their back or,
yeah.
Well,
is any you're talking about energy, really?
Energy. I think because I'm still trying to figure stuff out, but I think maybe I helped move. They had some stuck energy that was causing us something, and I helped move it.
Yes.
That's my best guess to what happened. And so they felt relief. It's just like, oh, because it moved for them and moved through. Yeah.
And they just think it's the magic of being in your company, which of course it is. And also there is some alchemy that you are creating, performing, whatever one does with alchemy. But there is something that is happening that you are, it wouldn't happen if you weren't there.
Yeah.
So it is about you and your energy and what you're bringing that's doing that. What I guess you need to figure out, if you can, is a way of doing that without it getting stuck in you.
100%. That's the goal for me right now, which is why I'm working on my own energy and learning how to move it through my body. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm also owning more of my gifts and be like, yeah, that is what I do. Like yeah, I do that. Like I create a super safe space for people. Like when people are in my presence, they feel safe and like they can be 100% themselves. It's like, yeah, that is a gift that I give people. Like, people don't walk around in the world, sadly, feeling like they can do that. And when they come and sit in front of me, that is what they get. And it like, and yeah, I'm like, yeah, well, that is something I offer people. And it is.
Oh,
I'm owning my gifts more.
it's
Yeah.
making me so happy to hear you say that. That you're owning your gift. I mean, I definitely experienced you like that, and that you know, I'm absolutely 100% sure other people do as well. Yeah, it fills me with great joy to hear you do that. Your
Thanks,
you know, Maggie talked about being able to express our fabulousness.
Yes.
And I love hearing you right there, you know, owning your fabulousness, or part of your fabulousness, because there's more to you than that. So yeah.
Thank you. I loved so much of your talk with Maggie. Like the things she was saying, I'm like, oh my gosh, I resonate with that. Not her magical medium, so to speak. So like runes don't necessarily draw me. I'm curious about all kinds of things.
Yeah,
So
me too.
I was like, oh, that's cool. You know, it's kind of like, well, that's cool. But the way that she talked about it, I'm just like, oh, I resonate with what she says. And I think it's a great example of, again, like there's so many entry points into, so it's not about the runes. If you don't resonate with that, okay, it's fine. But find a way to connect with the real you, the higher you, the deeper you, whatever your word is even about it, to connect with your wiser self, your true you, again, whatever your word. Like there's lots of entry points, but yeah, find your way in.
Find your way in, exactly. And she talked about you know, I thought this was really interesting because she talked a little bit about the magician and how you know, and how we all have bits, we all have little bits of all five of them. And we need, I think she was talking about, we need a bit of the magician. All of us need a bit of the magician to own the fabulousness of our main gift, you know, but also, especially as highly sensitive people, we can really feel, I hope I don't butcher what she said, I think she said we can really feel the overexpression of the magician in society and the world at large at the moment, or what some people will, they won't know it's what their magician, but what some people will feel is their is there them doing their bit in the world, they're controlling their I don't know, telling people what to do and all of that, and we feel that highly sensitive people can, as a collective, feel the overexpression of that, which puts us off owning the magician in us. And that really resonated with me.
Oh my gosh, me too, Philippa. Me too. Because we see, like you said, when things are being used, maybe not for the good of all, we just see it. So we see the harm, and then it's like, oh, I don't want to cause harm. So I'm not going to do that. And yet there are ways to use our gifts that cause such help for people.
Yeah.
Right. And us, that really, I resonated with that a lot too. That and what you talked about with broadcasting, which you mentioned briefly earlier, right? That because we take in so much, but we're also meant to give out. And I think of it like a breath, like we can breathe in and breathe in and breathe in and breathe. Well, it doesn't work unless you also exhale, right?
Oh, so that's making me feel about you taking it, but also you taking in all this, like when you could touch people and taking in the pain, and you have to give it out. You know,
that's yes. Ooh, I just got chilies. Thank you for saying that. Yes, that's a great thing to connect for my brain. 100%. Yes,
because she talked about the broadcasting in that, you know, we need to do it for us, and part of me is a bit like, oh, yeah, that's true. And also, do I want to own that bit? Do I want to own that there is a need in me that drives me to do this podcast and to talk about these things that, gosh, I hope are helpful. That's why I'm doing it. But there is a need in me to do this. And I've been quite open that I definitely started my first podcast before I met you because I needed to talk. I needed to hear my voice being and allow it to be heard, because that was definitely part of my healing journey. And this is definitely the next level of that. But actually, I am going to own that I need to broadcast, she says a little bit tentatively. But, you know, and I think, and Maggie said, we need to do that. We're not just here to help other people. We are here to help other people, but we're not here just for that. Yes. And it's okay for us to get what we need to. I mean, it's essential that we get what we need as well.
Okay. Yes. Yes. I think you said it was in a recent gathering. I'm getting, I think that's right. But it's like, what do you need out of the situation?
Yes.
And you might have said that to me one-on-one too. I can't remember. But it has stuck with me. I was just like, oh, right. Because that hasn't always been where I turn my attention. It's like, I want to make sure that the way I show up is good for everybody. But it's like, what do I need out of the situation? And to me, I connect that to what we were just like broadcasting. Yes. So what do we need out of this experience of life?
Yeah. Well, and this is a way for me. I mean, I definitely am an auditory processor. So I get to have these wonderful conversations with you. We get to let other people listen to them because, you know, they're interested, it helps them and all that. But also I get something out of this every single time, like you do.
100%. I mean, if you and I personally didn't get stuff out of this, we wouldn't do it, because we're at that stage in life now where we're just, if we could, we're choosing a lot of yeses and nos, right? Yeah. So yeah. If we weren't getting stuff out of this, we wouldn't do it. But every time we come back and we're like, no, this really is great for me. Yeah. It's great for me. Yeah. We get very fed by these conversations.
We do.
And I think this is an example. This is the win-win that I think HSP see for the world. Like, as we do things that are good for us, it also benefits other people. But we can start from that place of what would be good for me in this situation, which is the opposite of how I was trained to do. And most women I know are trained to do. They're trained what would be good for everybody else in this situation.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, and not give a thought to us.
Well, no, we don't matter. We're just here to serve other people.
It's like you said in that gathering that I said, so what do you need out of this situation? We were talking about a certain situation for a member of the community, weren't we? Yeah. But what do you need? Because somebody actually said that to me a few years ago, and in a situation that I really wasn't that happy about having to go into. And they said, but I said, I know I've got to go. They said, okay, well, what do you need out of it? Make sure you get what you need out of it. And that really helped me go into what was a difficult situation and come out of it feeling much better than I would have done otherwise. And I've understood the power in that. And it's absolutely okay for us to get something out of it as well.
I'm starting to really believe not only is it okay, it's actually essential.
It is, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And that the whole way we've been taught actually just needs to turn on its end.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the concern that comes up is just like, well, I don't want to be selfish.
Yes.
And I think there's a difference between taking care of yourself and causing harm to other people. And yeah.
What do you need? Yeah, exactly. And those of us who actually are really concerned about other people and are putting ourselves last, well, if those people want us around and want us to be there for them, then actually us giving ourselves what we need means we're going to be around for others. So it's not about I can only give to me or to you, or I can only give to me or to everybody else. You know, I have to choose. No, if I give myself to me, then I can then be available for other people. Yes. And also sometimes there is a boundary to put in place and not be there for absolutely everybody, but you get to choose who, you know, you benefits from your time and energy. But unless you are in good shape, unless you are meeting your needs, you're not going to be there for anybody.
100%.
So it benefits everybody. And, you know, go and listen to our episode on boundaries, because we talk about that much more in there. And And this is just really highlighting, isn't it, how it's all linked. Is that what you were about to say?
Yeah, like it all ties together, because I'm thinking about our episode on permission, like giving yourself permission, like it all intertwines.
Yeah. And comparison. Don't compare yourself to what other people are doing, because they're probably like wearing themselves out. Tune into you.
Yes.
And I think a really great way of doing that is what you've said throughout this episode, Robbie, is, in this episode, listen to what we're saying. Have you had a nudge? Has your intuition given you some idea of some of the things we're talking about that might be good for you? If not, that's fine. Maybe go and listen to some other episodes, go and listen to some other podcasts, read some articles, read some books. Are you getting a nudge? Or don't do any of those things and just try and tune into yourself. I mean, a lot of people find they can do that in meditation. I mean, we are encouraging you to tune into yourself.
Yes.
I found the way that I could do that was by reading other things, listening to other things, and feeling what I had a reaction to. Now, that is the way I started to tune in. That might not be what works for you, listener. It might be a different way. But work out what works for you.
Yes. I love the example you said, because it can be really helpful to have something to have a reaction to.
Yes.
So you can go, oh, no, or, oh, yes. It's often why I say things to my clients sometimes, and, we have an agreement, so that I'm going to say something, and then I want you to tune into how you experience that. What I say is I am not the law here.
Exactly.
I'm just me saying words. The goal is always for you to tune into your own experience and your own intuition and your own knowing. Yeah. But sometimes it helps to activate it by something else. And so that's exactly what you were saying. Go read something, go listen to something else, and then see, like, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's a great way to start, isn't it?
It's a beautiful way to start.
Yeah.
I mean, and also it came up for me as you were listing things. I'm like, and go take a nap.
Yeah. Yes.
If you're,
or a shower. Or a shower. Yes. All the great ideas come in the shower as well.
Take a swim. Oh, don't they? Right?
Yeah.
Or swim. Just relax. Do something to relax.
Yes.
That can also help, and just free some things to come bubbling up.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't really meditate, but my form of meditation is swimming. Really,
100%.
I'm definitely in my own little world. Even when I go with my friend, I'm definitely in my own little space as well.
Mm-hmm. And you're doing your breathing when you're doing it.
Yeah, well, you have to, because it's cold. Yeah. Oh, what a wonderful exploration of the what did I say? The perils of not tuning into your true self, or whatever I called it. And because the flip side of that, when we do tune into who we really are, we get to express our fabulousness.
Yes.
And that's what we want, more fabulousness all round.
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been fun.
It has. It's been real fun. I think we're probably done for today. Yeah. Do you agree?
So.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for listening. And remember, there is great strength and fabulousness in your sensitivity.
Yes, and the world needs you to be who you are. Not anybody else, but you to be who you are. So on that note, that's bye from me.
And it's bye from me.
Thanks for listening to HSP Connection. If you've enjoyed listening, we'd love you to hit the follow or subscribe button, as this helps other people find us. And it also means you won't miss an episode.
Also, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate the podcast and share it with anyone you think might be interested. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave us a review.
To get in touch with us, you can email us at hspconnectionpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you with your thoughts and comments on the episodes, as well as suggestions for future topics and guests.
We are both HSP coaches and speakers. And to find out more about Robbie, go to robbielee, leigh.com.
And to find out more about Philippa, go to boldhsp.com. See you next time.